liked it. So
been busting my butt today, man. I just like took my third shower before coming down here.
yeah, today was a work day for me too.
Yeah, well, like I took a shower, like because Trent was coming over for just a little bit this morning, and I didn't want to be like completely gross. And then I like as soon
You
as he
finally
left,
showered, Andy? God, thank
yeah,
goodness, man. I really appreciate it.
yeah. Well, some of the Magic players were been like, "Damn, you stink." I'm like, "Holy crap!" Like,
oh, that's bad.
no. And then I like mowed the lawn, so I took another shower, and then my wife was like, wanted to go see the movie coming out about Elton John.
Oh, did you guys see that?
No, she wants to go like tomorrow's a matinee, but we had cardio race. So like at like 3:00, she's like, "Do you want to do cardio race tonight? And that way we don't have to worry about it." I'm like, "Yeah, okay."
Just what I wanted to do.
I don't know. I like doing it, but I don't like going at night because there's a whole lot more people. So like the body heat level is much higher, and like I start sweating faster, and it just makes it unpleasant.
Gotcha.
But
you make it sound so pleasant, Andy.
Oh yeah. God, no.
I'm just right there with you, man. It's just so descriptive.
Yeah, normally actually I really like going, but Jesus, like when I went on Wednesday, I about died because like I missed Friday, right? Like last Friday due to like William having an appointment, and then Memorial Day was on Monday, and that's my normal workout time, so I missed that. And so then I come back, and it's like one of the normal workouts. It's not even like the easy day. So I had to do all that. And I hit the cycle where my weights all went up as well.
Yeah.
It was all done. I'm like, I want to die.
Yeah.
It was one of those like ran home, like took like a freezing cold shower trying to cool down, and then just like fell in front of a fan for another hour trying to cool down.
Yeah, I always like those feelings though because usually like when you just keep pushing it little by little, like you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I just worked harder than I could.
Yeah. And, now, normally I enjoy it. It was just the fact that I missed so many days. So sometimes that first like go at it again is kind of a pain in the butt.
Then you might like not up your weights if you've missed a lot of days.
I don't have a choice. Like, no, they literally give you like a key that's like your programmed workout.
But like, if you're taking days off, then your program workout should like delay too.
Yeah. I powered through most of it. There was only like one set, like the last workout I had to do. And I made it through the first of 3 sets. And then I tried to do the last one, and I got like 1 rep. And I'm like, nope, we're done. I cannot do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But
wow, do I sound distant? Did I sound distant? Because now there we go. I sound a little bit closer.
Yeah, now it's better.
Realize it came in pretty clearly with the mic being all the way on the other side of the table.
Yeah,
teacher voice. Speaking of which, that was our last day of regular school. We have the semester test days for the next 3 school days. Their final day being my wife's birthday. Happy birthday, Caroline, on June 4th.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's when we're done. And I need to put in for my personal day because I haven't used it. I had like 1 extra one. So I was banking.
Do they let you like bank 1 or anything? Sometimes?
They let you bank 2 and they give you 2. So it's like, it's one of those like using one feels super guilty because like then somebody gets married and you're like, I can't go. I'm sorry. I'm out of personal days.
Yeah.
It's different here than in the great state of Pennsylvania where teachers can just be like, I'm not going to be in tomorrow, personal or sick. Like, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Like treating educators well. Yeah, or at least as human beings, not blaming them for all the troubles.
I don't know how far I want to take it, Andy. I mean,
when it's in reality, all those darn lazy millennials just can't. No, I'm kidding. I'm trolling.
Lots of it looks like Mer's been playing some Memoir 44, as well as a lot of Fleet series, which he mentioned Fleet Warside, which is that 2-player game, I think. I don't know. I don't think I've played that one, but I have played the other Fleet games.
It's like play Fleet on a fishing boat.
That would be cool. That would be like really cool.
It's kind of like the day I want to play like Madeira while on Madeira.
Like playing Fleet on, or just even like while watching The Deadliest Catch. Which I mean, maybe not The Deadliest Catch because that one might be a little more intense.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, The Deadliest Catch. Yeah.
But that's kind of what Fleet is. It's like the sort of rush fishing, that's sort of some of the most lucrative fishing there is. One of the most lucrative professions, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should watch the Titanic on.
Yeah. What? I had loads of middle schoolers that after watching The Deadliest Catch are like, I'm going to do that. Like, you could make all your living money in like 2 months. And I look at them, I'm like, yeah, unless you really improve your exercise routine, you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does look like we're zeroing in on the time here. I think that we've killed it for enough here. I do want to mention a welcome to Carter as well in our chat here, who mentioned the Titanic. There is a game, by the way, like an SOS Titanic game about saving people on Titanic.
I actually want that. You cannot find that freaking thing anywhere.
Isn't that a solo game? Game, right?
Yeah, it's like based on some like solitary game kind of thing that's really well known, but like the part that's apparently cool is you got this little flip book that you like keep turning pages when you beat it, and it's just like the boat going further and further down.
Yeah, that's right. Until it ends with just each part capsizes. Welcome to Dean as well in our chat. So
till it ends with that stupid home wrecking Leonardo DiCaprio. Little butt had it coming.
Does Christine have a crush on him? Is that what I'm saying?
Like Rose, she actually hated him because he could have been saved on there too, and she's just nope. I need extra leg room and let him die.
Oh come on, it was gonna sink. That's what everybody says. It was sinking. He tried to get up on it and it sank, and so he sacrificed himself. And
Then James Cameron cared so much about the movie, he screwed up the night sky.
I did not realize that. Is that a Neil deGrasse Tyson observation?
No. It was even better because, like literally, like with an internet search, he could have got like a correct sky. So he had the wrong sky up for that actual date and time. And even worse, they only had half a sky and just cut and pasted it. So like, as an astronomer, he's like, wait, there are not 2 of those constellations.
Well,
and he kept
it fooled me, Andy.
No, the best part was Neil Tyson kept bugging him about it for literally years.
Oh, it did?
He seriously, every time he met James Cameron, he would bring it up.
Wow.
And finally, when they did like the anniversary edition where they re-released it,
he fixed it.
Yeah, they emailed Neil deGrasse Tyson and asked for
nice. Make sure everything is good with this movie. No more cinema sins.
Oh no, he even did it to Jon Stewart when he was a guest on The Daily Show. Like when they had the opening, when the globe's spinning, the first thing he said when he sat down, he's like, your Earth spins the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like next season they fixed it. Nice. Good times.
All right, well, let's get this thing a running here. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm the host of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Salin, joined tonight by Andrew Dennison, who is recounting all of Titanic's cinema sins.
Yep.
Good thing there aren't many.
Yeah, just the night sky.
Oh, spoiler alert, the ship sinks.
Thanks for that spoiler. Well, and here I am, like, when should I have said that? I was going to say in a second. What is The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly? But first of all, Trent Ham. Trent, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Let's do this.
Let's get it going. The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games loosely based on the 1986 disaster in Chernobyl, just played out over the course of now 211 episodes in the form of banter about tabletop games. So I'm saying this, of course, because TC, who is not here tonight, by the way, good luck with TC. He was pursuing some professional opportunities, and it sounded like things were going well. So certainly hope for the best for him. But thanks to TC, though he's not here, because he mentioned the merits of the new mini series that's currently in the midst of releasing on HBO, Chernobyl. And so I have now had there might be an unsolicited review coming. Just nudge, nudge. Might be one. I might not, but like all I can say is
send unsolicited review hate mail to @JoeSalon.
Go for it. It's very clear by the title that your hate is misfounded. I know what I'm doing, and I'm doing it anyway. It's incorrigible. So I'm loving it, though. I am absolutely thrilled. Like I mean, just the short review, just to like show you how excited I am. Which, by the way, whenever somebody's super super excited, understand that that's happened inside of my head, and will probably not happen inside of your head for the same reasons or at the same intensity. So don't expect that. But I have now had 2 nights when I have woke up in the middle of the night, like thinking about, like, there are haunting scenes and images from this show. And, a lot of times when I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about something, I'm kind of upset, like it's something from my real life that stresses me out. It's weird to be like, to have my sleep disturbed by a show, but yet somehow still feel like really satisfied with like my my wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep for a little while. I mean, I'm eventually getting back to sleep, so maybe it's because I'm not, it's not that bad, but like I got to get my mind off it. But the fact that
you're getting older, like sleep about the time you can start enjoying sleep again, your body's just like, nope.
Okay, I don't know where to go with that, Andy. Maybe it's my positive spin, and you're just like, nah, it's just this. The curmudgeonly attitude towards everything from Andrew Dennison. That's what he's here for.
I did have students,
watch Chernobyl, by the way.
Yeah, I used to have students like, Mr. Dennison, do you have to ruin everything with science? I'm like, yes.
I don't think that was science. That was more like personal opinion and griping. Like, there's no science about, like, well,
yes,
I don't know. Some people as they age, I mean, is it like you can actually sleep better at different points. I don't know. Like I slept much, much better in, I would say about 15 years ago, I could not sleep at all. And then, maybe 12 years ago, it started to sort of even out. So yeah, and that was aging. I don't know.
Then we'll be like 80 and going to bed at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like eating 2 meals a day.
Okay. Can't wait, can we? Can't wait.
You make it sound so great there, Andy.
Yeah. The road ahead is just, you can't wait to get there.
No.
Mm-hmm. And what happens between now and then, irrelevant, because just that end of the road, that spoon-fed.
My current retirement plan is to like, go into a retirement home and force all the old people to learn 18xx games.
That'll go really well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or play D&D. Live stream D&D at the retirement center. That would be sweet.
Actually, that could work, yeah. I mean, especially with some of them are made to be kind of simpler experiences. So, there are many different scenarios you could play.
And not only that, most retirement homes I've been in have been a lot like Ravenloft.
Mm-hmm.
God, that's
is that a dig? I'm not familiar enough.
Ravenloft is the gothic horror setting for D&D.
Yeah.
Okay. The actual. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically like the shtick of Ravenloft was always like the mists are coming in, and your players go, Jesus, we're gonna lose all our characters again.
Oh no! Just make it stop. But it's so tense,
and it's even meaner because it's like it even says in the Ravenloft rulebook like you're not supposed to give them very many magic items because then it makes things too easy.
Oh, and so they expect a difficulty level.
Yeah.
Characters are dispensable.
Yeah, they want you to like seek out silver swords to kill werewolves instead of just having a magic one.
Of course. So like they don't want people getting around the rules with magic, which is kind of what magic gets used for.
Yeah, it's like, if you're too well armed and equipped, you don't feel scared.
You know what real life magic is? Like radiation. speaking of Chernobyl, like that's the real life magic, and it's scary and it's not good and it's bad for you. So yeah, you shouldn't do magic. I endorse Castle Ravenloft's approach to magic.
Yeah.
Can't get my mind off of
nuclear engineers. Send all 8 mail to @JoeSalin.
I'm pretty sure no nuclear engineer is going to be like, actually, there are many types of radiation that you want to be well, actually, I don't know. Maybe there are. I have no idea. But I would say that the type of radiation that I'm specifically referring to, the one that I would call like real life magic, just basically causes your cells to stop doing what they're supposed to do.
Oh, there was that guy who ran for like the House, and I think it was Oregon, that like he had quote unquote scientific papers studying the health benefits of spreading low grade radioactive waste over the entire Earth's surface.
That's job security for TC out in Oregon, where he works in a medical lab.
Well, to be fair, his papers were published by an institute, which, if you're talking science, you should always be worried at the word institute, consisting of him, his brother, and like their uncle.
Institute.
Yeah, no, I watched an interview with him. It's literally the only time in my life I've ever seen a reporter bashing their head on their desk, because it's that frustrating.
There's a pretty bad Richard Spencer one up there in the Northwest in Idaho, I think it was. Yeah, BBC set one up pretty well. Anyway.
Remember, hug your uranium. It prevents cancer.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Like the new bleach thing.
Yeah.
Anyway. So we will eventually get around to talking about board games. And tonight the topic is that carrot that dangles in front of all of us, the game you can't get because it's out of print. We're going to talk about the ethics of what to do regarding consuming games that are out of print, or whether or not you should. So before that, we will review a handful of games, and on our way out the door, hype a few. So let's get kicked off here with a well, it has start in the title. So Trent, you go first.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the board game. Well, board game is really a stretch. I'm going to talk about the tiny box game Startups. Startups? Is that what's going on?
Joe's dogs went crazy for a second.
Okay, I didn't actually hear it at all, so I just heard Andy all of a sudden burst into laughter. I didn't know what was going on. All right. The game I'm going to talk about is Startups, which is a tiny box game from Oink Games. It was designed by Jun Sasaki. I'm going to guess I'm pronouncing that right. I have no idea. Sorry if I'm not. And it comes in a really tiny box. If you've ever seen the Oink Games style boxes, they're really small. They're easily fit in a hip pocket, not even a problem.
Like wallet size.
Yeah, wallet size, but I mean, they're a little thicker, but it would easily fit in a hip pocket for most people. They're really small box games, and this is actually a stock game for that size, and it plays for 3 to 7 players. And I actually think it plays best at about 5. I've played it at a variety of player counts. I played this a ton already. Okay, so here's what happens in Startups. It's really easy. You draw a card, and then you play a card.
That's it.
Okay, that's maybe a little oversimplification. So what there is in this game, you have a bunch of chips. They're all double-sided. They say 1 on one side and 3 on the other. You get 10 of these chips at the start of the game. Every player does. That's the entire economy for the game. You put all the chips in the game back in the box. So everybody has 10 chips that are worth 1 each. You also have a hand of 3 cards. The cards in this game represent stocks. There are 6 different kinds of stocks. There's 5, and they're most easily identified by number. There's 5, 6, 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s. And naturally, there are 5 5s, 6 6s, 7 7s, and so on. Mm-hmm. So you have a hand of 3 of these cards, and on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. Or you have to do one thing, and then you have to do another thing. First thing you do is draw a card, which seems straightforward enough. There's this deck in the middle of the table. Except that if there are any cards around that deck, and we'll go back to that in just a second, you have to put a coin on each one before you can draw a card. Alternately, if there's any cards sitting around the deck, you can take that card instead and put it in your hand. There is an exception to that. If you have the most cards of a particular company, you can't take that card, but you also don't have to pay its tax. But aside from that, that's basically how it works. You either draw the card off the top of the deck, and if you do that, you pay a tax on all the ones that are out there, or you take a card that's out there and also get to keep the tax that's been collected on it. Straightforward. Now you have 4 cards in hand. You have 2 choices with your hand. You can take one of the cards and play it to the table in front of you, or you can take a card and play it out in front of the deck, so it's one of those cards that other players have to pay tax on. You keep repeating this, and it goes around the table and keeps going until someone draws the last card in the deck, and then that's the last turn of the game. Then everybody puts the 3 cards that remain in their hand down on the table in front of them, add to their own stock tableau, and then you score. Scoring is where this game is great, and once you realize what the implications are of scoring, that's when this game gets fantastic. So the way scoring works is you either want to have no shares of a company, or you want to have the most shares of a company. You do not want to be in between, because that is straight all around very bad. So let's say, for example, that I had 3 shares of the blue company, and Joe had 2 shares I had 3 shares of company number 6, Joe had 2 shares of company number 6, and Andy had 1 share. In that case, Joe would pay me 2 of his tokens, and Andy would pay me 1 of his. But they flip over to their 3 side when you get paid at the end of the game. So, by me being in the lead of that company, I'm getting 9 points for in-game scoring. And this is a game where the highest score I have yet seen is 40. So, being all alone in the lead of a company is what you're trying to do throughout this game. And once you start seeing that and you realize how important that is, you get very wary of playing cards in front of you. Because you don't want to be stuck with like 2 or 3 shares of a company when someone else has 4 of them. That's just bad for you. You lose points and they gain a lot of points. Mm-hmm. So then you start deciding, well, when do I want to be in this company and when don't I want to be in this company? So like you look around the table and you're like, well, that person has only 1 share of this company out. I have 3 in my hand, but is that really enough to win me that company? It is if it's the 5 company, because you have majority, but what if it's the 9 company? 3 isn't nearly enough to just win it. So then you kind of got to like, am I going to hold on to these, or what am I going to do? Another nice thing to do is you can hold cards for a company in your hand until the end of the game. Drop 3 shares of that company out of your hand that they didn't know were coming and take majority of it. I've seen that happen a bunch. Mm-hmm. Joe, I played a game with Joe recently, and he essentially didn't play any companies at all and just collected mountains of coins. And pretty much the only cards he had, I mean, he had a couple more, but most of his cards at the end of the game were the ones he had to play from his hand at the end. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, well, I pay out 5 coins, I win anyway. Because all he done is collect over and over and over. That can work if everybody is just putting coins on cards. And another game I played, basically, if a card had a coin on it, people were taking it. And that Joe's strategy would not have worked, ever. Mm-mm. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of meta feeling to it. There's a lot of uncertainty as to what you should be doing. And that, it kind of reminded me of Container a little bit. It's very open, free economy. You kind of do whatever you want. And it plays in about 30 minutes. It fits in this tiny, tiny little box. It's amazing how much game there is in this little box. I absolutely love it. I highly recommend it. If you like economic games and you want a filler economic game that fits in your hip pocket, go out there right now and get Startups. It's on, you can get it off of Amazon for less than 20. You can find it at various shops for even less than that, getting down to about the $15 range. It's well worth it. I've gotten a ton of play out of this, and I really like it. It's Startups.
Cool. Andy, you've had a game of this, I believe?
Yeah, I played it once. I pretty much went home and bought it. Yeah.
I'm surprised.
No, the thing, I really like games where you have to get into the headspace of your opponents, and you really have to play the players. And there's not often a lot of short games that do that real well, and this one definitely did. Like, this is a super interactive game. It's one where you got to be playing the players to really do well. No, I really liked it. Yeah. This is a fill. I would put this in the category of a light filler for most of what I would use it for, and it's definitely, I would rather play this than many light fillers I've played.
Gotcha.
How about you, Joe? You played it.
I played it twice, and I think, Trent, that its gameplay is going to be very emergent, very group dependent. It will which I think is a very big thing to be able to say about such a small game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, yeah, I'd love to keep exploring it, and I've had fun with it so far. The inherent simplicity of the play a card, draw a card, is, I mean, you can't really argue with that, right? You can't get caught up and confused in that. So I think that this seems like exactly what Oink Games is looking to do, but at the same time, it's like a micro game that simulates the company dumping, the comp dump of an 18xx game, because it's just like you get stuck if you have the second most or you have stock in any company that you're not the main owner in. So
yeah, I like what Trent described. He was holding because you play all your cards in hand at the end, and those are all played shares as well. And I think it was that he had lulled his son into thinking he had majority, and he was sitting on 3 shares of that company at the end of the game. And like he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get so much money," and Trent lays it down, and the kid was not initially happy, but
yes.
I don't know.
That's a good summary. I would say the highest score I mentioned that I've seen at this was 40, and my daughter got it. And she got it she did this weird. It was weird what she did. She looked like she was tied in 3 different companies near the end. And then she had 1 share of each of them in her hand at the very end. So it gave her the lead in 3 different companies, and she was getting paid in big time from her siblings. And for me, I'm a one of them.
So she sandbagged on the right stuff.
Yeah, she sandbagged perfectly. I mean, I don't know. I don't think she was even quite intending. I don't really. Sometimes when you're playing with kids, you don't know if a really good move wasn't as intentional as they thought. You're never sure. But it was, it was just like, oh, wow, that was an amazing move.
You did the right thing. Well, that's funny that you can do that with a game with such a small game. So that is Startups from Oink Games. So check that out for a small game about stocks. I think we all had fun with it so far. So I expect maybe a later update for me if we get a chance to play it more. All right. Moving right along into another small game. I think today's going to be the day. Yeah, the theme for the day is small games for some reason. And that'll be you, Andy, sort of transitioning from a stock game into a train game.
Yeah, about the smallest train game I think you can get. So this is kind of my first impressions because I've just played it once today. But it's really interesting. So I'm going to talk to you about penny rails. So this is from a company called Button Shy. It's basically an 18-card train game that goes in literally a wallet with sleeved cards. You need to add in some coins. You have to put in 3 dimes, 3 pennies, and 3 nickels. You can even put those in the wallet, and it still fits in a wallet. But what you do is basically there's city cards, and there's 3 lines on every card. And one is for the penny rail, the nickel rail, and the dime rail. And you just play cards off them, branching off in interesting ways. What's really neat, though, is how interactive it is, because when I first heard about this, the game was designed by Travis Hill from Low Player Count. When I first heard about this, I didn't know quite what to think of it. It looked interesting, but I wasn't quite sure where it was going. But yeah, this game has some teeth, because you can do things like someone can lay down a card and they're building up their train and their track, and you can position another card to just block them, because one of the rules is you can't lay a track card over another track card. So if I orient one rail in such a way to just block off one, you can't go forward that way. You have to do something different. What's neat is there's also shares. So the coins represent shares in the different companies. But what's really weird is if the coin is heads up, if it's heads, it's 1 share. If it's tails, it's 2 shares. And it's asymmetric each line. So the penny rail has 3 1 shares. The nickel one had, I believe, 2 1 shares and 1 2 share, and then the dime one had 2 2 shares and then 1 1 share. And the way the shares work is you have different ways of going about it. So, for example, you can take a 1 share just as it takes shares action. You can trade in a 1 share to get a 2 share. But then you could also find out that your 2 shares crap, and you could trade in your 2 share and you only get a 1 share out of it. Or there's just all these different weird ways to manipulate the shares. And then ways to block people. And then you can reserve a card. So you can just take a card and then like hold it and use it later. Which, you know, if somebody does that to a city, that could be a weird way to do it. And then basically you do this until the St. Louis card is drawn, which is randomly placed as one of the last 3 cards in the deck. Once it's played, you're done. Then you count up and you score. The way you score is basically by connections of each line, and then the cities will add bonuses to that. The basic scoring method, I believe, is whoever has the most shares of that company gets those points. Trent and I did the advanced method, which was you pay it like dividends. So you add up the total value and divide by the number of shares that are in the player's hands. We were both doing very different things in terms of our shares, and like Trent ended up beating me by like 1 point. So
and somewhere in that 1 or 2, it wasn't much.
Yeah. But it's weird. So it's like a 2-player 18-card train game with stocks and track laying with these cards. It's an odd duck, but dang, it's pretty cool. Like, you know, it plays in like 10 minutes, 10, maybe 15 if you're really, you know, APing it out. You know, it's got all this weird root building with how you twist the cards. There's cities and there's, you know, shares in it. And most train games don't do particularly well at 2 players, but my feeling is this one does. And it felt very much, weirdly enough, like my first game was just pulling some levers. And then you start looking at it going, oh, but I could do it this way. So this little 18-card game, 9 coins of pocket change is making me think about it in a way that's actually kind of deep. Like, I'm like, oh, I could have done this. No, wait, maybe if I reserve a card like this, that's a good idea. In 18 cards, that's crazy. So yeah, I'm a fan of this. Definitely, yeah, like thanky filler in about as small of a package as you're gonna find. It's like $10 to buy the game. Whoa. Although, yeah, so it's neat. I'm a big fan of penny rails. I'm definitely
like it, dude. Pretty high praise there.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to say to add to that, Trent, that you haven't said already?
I feel pretty similar to Andy. It's Penny Rails does a really good job of cranking out a lot of game out of 18 cards in various different ways. And this is a good example of it. This is pretty much like about as close to an 18XX compressed down to 18 cards and no boards as I can imagine.
Yep. I don't know how you get any closer with that few components, man. So, but no, it was a really good time. I enjoyed it. And like I said, there's enough opacity to it that with 18 cards, I'm like starting to think about it. And like, you know, I got to go to bed here in a while. So we'll see if it survives like the I'm thinking about it the next day test, but it looks like it's going to.
Well, that sounds exciting, and I'd like to try that sometime. So, Penny Rails, 2 players, small game, card game. I kept thinking 18 Lilliput when you were talking because it sounds like, you know, you use the cards for track and stuff, but I'm sure that's going to be a little bit more like a traditional 18XX, and this is more of its own beast.
Yeah, 18 Lilliput's much more of like a full game, not like a full 18XX. This is definitely like an 18XX micro game, if that's weird to think about.
A little strange, you know, but hey, each game has its own opportunity to find a market, and I'd like to try this one, especially with it being a small game, not too much investment. I'm excited for those types of things, which is one of the reasons I'm reviewing Cacao with the Chocolatl expansion today, because I'm finding myself like, and I don't think I'm the only one. I've seen this sort of echoed on some forums and stuff on BGG, but Phil Walker Harding is just, for some reason, capturing my heart with these smaller games that like seem to always create tension, and like there is sort of there's multiple planes of enjoyment, kind of like a Pixar movie where I think it can be appreciated by somebody who's just learning it, or at the same time people who have played it multiple times are like looking for that sort of deeper underlying strategy. And I think Cacao is an example of this because basically the game is a tile laying game where everybody has an identical deck with a different color of these worker tiles, and they'll have either each tile has 4 workers placed on it, but they might have 1 worker on each of the orthogonal sides, or they might have 3 on one and 1 on an adjacent, or 2 1 and 1 and 0. And so basically, like, the workers that you have in this game are your separate printed deck. You're going to draw 3, shuffle that deck, draw 3, and then there's an additional deck of sort of like action tiles, and those action tiles involve the acquisition of Cacao, which you can get from tiles that create Cacao, and then you will have to put in storage, which you can only carry 5, or markets where you can sell Cacao. There's an additional track that you move up that is like a watering track that is worth points. You start the game at like -16 or -11 or something like that. If you don't get any water throughout the game, you end the game with like that negative points. But if you can get all the way up to 16 positive points if you get enough water. So and in the base game, that's most of it. There are a little bit of area control with temples and a little bit of well, I think actually, hold on. Oh, you can overbuild in the late game when the deck of tiles runs out, the action tiles. You can actually overbuild your previous tiles if you get a specific resource. So, but that's about it. The way that this gameplay is emergent is in how you actually create, together with your opponents, the board, and the way that you sort of leave yourself open to more options, but then also are trying to minimize what your opponent can do. If your opponent ever has a full warehouse of 5 Cacao, you can freely play a Cacao tile and just sort of like use their worker tile without, it'll use up some of their workers without getting any effect. Same way with if they have no Cacao and you play a market on their people. So, I mean, there's ways to, like interact with your opponents and sort of mess with what they're trying to do. But the gameplay here is very simple, especially in the base game. There's really, I mean, it's a very simple system. There's not that much to it. And I'm excited to play with the expansion Chocolatl because it adds like 4 different things. One of which is a hut system. Like, you've got all these huts that are put out at the beginning of the game that each cost a certain amount of essentially points in the game. You're trying to get the most coins, and these coins are points that you can spend on huts. And these huts will either give you just more coins or a special ability or end game coins for a certain, like, some of them are just straight up coins. Other ones are like, coins for every, for meeting certain conditions. But I've played with that a little bit, and it certainly is a light way of implementing a little bit more of like goals to shoot for. There is a module that is just adding a few irrigation tiles so that you can actually spend the water that you've acquired from that water track. There is a module that adds chocolate, which is a refined version of Cacao, and then you can sell it for even more. And then the final little bit here is the map expansion, which just gives a bit of a for those action tiles. In the base game, you just draw 2, and in the map expansion, you actually draw 4, and it becomes now like a drafting line. So it just, it kind of like all these little things seek to put just a little bit more in the game, and they go from very minor, as in the irrigation is just really just a slight nudge, and the chocolate is a extra mechanism, but it's very simple to understand. Whereas I would say that the map is more control, and then the huts are kind of your like your more stuff. So I find that the Chocolatl expansion certainly has pieces that I think could please anyone, but nothing here is like totally absolutely must have. I do think that it's pushing the game a little bit more, just to have a little bit more meat on the bones, and not just a more stuff style expansion, which one of the things Phil Walker Harding seems to be great at is making the simplest game that, at least from an experienced gamer's point of view, I'm never that impressed, from a gameplay standpoint in my first game. Instead, I'm more impressed at how simple and easy to learn the game was. And then 2 or 3 games in, I'm like, hold on, there's something more here than just like, it's like when I first played Cacao, I thought, oh, you know, what does this do that Carcassonne doesn't? And now I start to see like this is a different beast, and the way that you sort of build this out is you know, it's like that's all the game is in Carcassonne. But here, since there's that laid on top of other things going on in Cacao, it certainly is like, I think that next plane of understanding is in how you actually create the entire you know, the entire jungle, if you will. So that's my overall thoughts on how Cacao is like many of Phil Walker Harding's games. You know, maybe simple to a fault on its first play, but I think that there's more there than meets the eye, and I'm excited then to keep playing with the Chocolatl expansion, and even to see what the Diamante, the newest expansion, which appears to add plastic diamonds and plastic gems to the game. So we'll see where that one stands. So a little small box expansion for a fairly small and simple game, Cacao, and I'm enjoying playing it with you know, with new gamers generally is where I tend to find that this game is, you know, best suited. So that's my thoughts on Cacao. What do you fellas think? Any of you played Cacao at all?
I have not played Cacao, no.
Cacao. Well, that will be.
I was not gonna go there.
All that's said about it, I guess. So, let's see here. The games, since we don't have anything else to say about Cacao, but you know, I hope everybody checks it out. Let's get to the meat of the show. Let's get to the topic. Let's get to those out of print games, those impossible to find games. Which is are you guys good here for the topic? Did you choose, Andy? Is Penny Rails tough to find out of print, or is it readily available?
Weirdly enough, readily available right now.
Yeah, it just came out.
Wow. If you catch us on any other show, Andy's going to have a game that's like impossible to find. But for the topic tonight, we chose just ones that you could do. So anyway, Trent, I'll let you introduce, if you will, what specifically in out-of-print games most, I guess, most has you at a bit of a ethical conundrum.
Okay, so I brought this up because I've been thinking a lot about Dune. Okay, so Dune is going to be reprinted in the very near future, most likely releasing at Gen Con and then releasing to the general public a few weeks thereafter. Dune is a classic game that was originally published by Avalon Hill back in the 70s, reprinted a couple times in the 80s, and it's basically been out of print since. Part of the reason it's been out of print for so long is because the rights to the game were in a weird place. The Frank Herbert estate controlled some aspects of it. Fantasy Flight Games controlled some aspects of it. Rights were mixed up everywhere. And eventually, apparently in the last few years, somehow or another, Gale Force 9 has managed to get all the rights to everything needed to reprint Dune, the old 1970s, 1980s classic negotiation game. And they're reprinting it. Well, I never had a chance. I've seen the original, but I've never had a chance to own it. And so I got someone to make me a print and play of it because I really was eager to play it. And I paid this person for their efforts, and I had a nice print and play of it, nice board and everything. I was really happy with it. And now I've got this conundrum. It's like, okay, so I went and bought this nice print and play when Dune was out of print, but now it's coming back into print. Do I have any obligation to buy the one that's in print? Or should I stick with my print and play even though it's a copy of a game that I had no right to make, and also it's now back in print? Like, how do I feel about this? I've decided I'm going to go ahead and get the new version. I thought about it a lot, and I decided I was going to go ahead and get the new version. But I want to bring this up as like, well, then if I'm okay with getting the new version when it's back in print now, was I still okay doing it when there was no chance of it ever coming back into print? And then, then I went down a whole thought process about what makes games go out of print, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of where I got to this topic idea from.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, you know, for this particular game, you look at the reason that there isn't something, you know, being put out, and it has to do with kind of a bit of an unreasonable I would say an unreasonable perspective, an unreasonable. Gosh, it's just escaping me right here. But what the Frank Herbert estate seems to do with the Dune license up till this moment is just no, that we're not going to do a thing.
They're hard to work with, I've heard.
Yeah, and it like sort of historically hard. So I think is it a gray area though? Is there a right and a wrong to all situations, or is it if the people are going to be like that, then I want to play this game, and I really want to play this game. And when it comes down to it, if you really want to play the game, does the designer of, the original designer of, Hearts going to be like anybody that scratches their own playing cards? It's like, at what point does the game even exist? And we saw especially with how Age of Steam, the legal, because that was one of those that was laid bare for all of us to see, that the legal side of games is just pretty much that you can't really copyright much of anything. So if people, from a designer's perspective, people are pretty much, you should almost be flattered that people are going to play your game, even though it can be kind of disheartening, when there's drama tied up in that, I would say. For example, if you've put a lot of work into a game system and you've done it based on a specific theme, and then, we created this game and you've even created all this stuff for an expansion, and the game just barely releases, and then all of a sudden the publisher that you led you to believe that you were going to be able to release this game with this theme from this, this intellectual property, and they lose the rights, and now all of a sudden your game dies because of nothing that you did at all. And so now the game exists only in this sort of, ghost, what do they call it? Ghostware? Like that when a game is in in limbo. And you don't know if it'll ever be released. I mean, I can really see limboware. Is that it?
Vaporware. You're talking about
vaporware. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, vaporware. I can just imagine, imagine what a designer feels like to see that there's an audience so excited. I could just see that being a complex state of mind to be like, here's this game that just when I see it, I feel nothing but absolute dread. It's a trauma every time you see anything about this game, and yet people are that excited for it. I mean, maybe that's at least a little bit of silver lining in that they did good work, and that their work was good, that people are going to work that hard to make the game. But at the same time, it's all about how you filter it, because if you're looking at that and you're just thinking I am so pissed that this game this is my life's work right here. I could have been the next Vlada if and this is my life's work here. This is my Through the Ages, the game that gets me on the map, and it just is not going to be released, and it's nothing I did. So,
yeah, and I think for me, because I do a lot of P&P stuff, right? A lot of this gets into a weird situation because a lot of the ones I've done. Well, first of all, let me go over my general philosophy of when is it okay in my book to copy a game and how that should be handled. If a game is out of print, I have no trouble personally, I think, making a copy of that game. If it's out of print and finding a copy is not a reasonable solution, I guess, is I would say on that. So I don't have a trouble then at making a copy of that game. I've done that before. However, I do then think it behooves me to, if that game is re-released, to buy that new copy and then destroy my print and play of it. Because
destroy it.
Yeah, I generally don't. I don't generally pass those on too much unless it's not a big deal. Just because I do ultimately. Okay, so when I get games, I ultimately do want money to go to the publisher and to the designer. I don't want to cheat them out of it. So I'm happy to buy the game and give them that. But if they're not going to make it available, and I ultimately have the skills, ability, and desire then yeah, I'll make a PNP of it, and I won't feel bad about it at all. It doesn't bother me at all. But yeah, ultimately, I do want to give them money. The other thing of when I think it's okay to make a print and play of a game, and what I don't consider reasonable, because some people just be like, oh, wait till it comes up on the secondary market. I am totally BS on the secondary market. I don't like dealing with it in the sense of when people start to charge ridiculous prices because it's rare. Yeah, that's fine. They can do that. And if I really wanted the actual physical thing, maybe I'd pay for it. But if I am buying from the secondary market, none of that money is going back to the publisher or the artist. That's just all going to somebody who put it up for a higher price. I feel absolutely no moral problem making my own version of it and undercutting them and doing it. Doesn't bother me a bit. Like I said, however, if I have then the option to purchase the game and get money back to that designer and artist and the people who worked on it, yep, do it. No question. Right there. Buy it. Done. Because that's ultimately what I want to do. It's just when the barriers are put in place to prevent that from happening, then I personally, I just don't feel bad about it. I know
it sounds to me, Andy, like this is a very strong position that you hold yourself to. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're doing an awful lot of work in creating those PNPs. Like that's a lot of work, and to destroy that would be hard for me to do. But then again, for me, it's even more work than it is for you because I don't, it seems like you enjoy the creation process for some of those things, and I do think that that's something that like for me at least, I don't have my filter up to be able to like I'm having fun with this, right? Like for me, it'd be like I'm making a classroom work aid, except this is not for my schools. It's work, and it's for my for my hobby, which isn't supposed to be work. And yeah, so that's the wrong way to go about thinking about it, which is one of the reasons I don't do that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's a really strong position, and I respect that position. I think that when it comes down to it, we need to support the people that make our games, and so I don't think there's anything wrong with like holding on to a game or passing a game that like if it was me and I had a PNP that was out of print, I'm not going to have been the one that created it, so I won't feel that attachment that I could imagine feeling if I were you, Andy, and had created it. But I mean like having that game and then passing it on, especially to somebody who's not economically in a position where they would be able to get the game. Like I don't know. I don't think a designer would hold that, because I mean they're not like burn all the copies that didn't, like all these bootleg copies. Then it's like, well, to a certain extent, that person that made a bootleg copy might actually be able to get onto an online forum and popularize the game, and you want your game out, So I mean, it's not just like you're doing only harm by this. Mm-hmm. And they all, not only that, but they could help you in the creation of, rules and other things that would only be possible if they had access to the game. So I guess I understand what you're saying. And it's a really strong position, and I totally understand like the respect for designers and stuff. Mm-hmm. But Jesus, man, destroying a game? Holy crap.
It's very zen.
So
I'm worried about you now, man.
What do you do if you make a print and play of a game and it's been out of print and then all of a sudden it comes back in? Do you buy it?
Do I buy the game?
Yeah.
I haven't.
He buys it and then destroys it, right?
Then destroy my original print and play. Yeah, I've done that so far with everyone that I can think of. I've copied.
Cool.
Like Container?
I think so. I don't remember on that one, but yeah, all the other ones I've pretty much done it. But that Container wasn't that hard. That was mostly the 3D printer.
So apparently, you're not that much of a hardliner, Andy.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I generally do that and kind of handle it that way. Now, the one thing I disagree with, and I've had arguments about this, is there are people that when they release a game, that they go with kind of like the intellectual property idea. Like, I made this, it's mine, it's my idea, and I get that. But you also need to understand you're living in the freaking 21st century now. And when you put an idea out into the world, it doesn't really stay your idea very long anymore.
We wouldn't be so worried about all this if it wasn't. I mean, you know, I don't like. I don't go down this road too much, but like, you know, if people were just taken care of and they weren't, you know, we weren't all fighting all the time for everything that we do and trying to turn our work and our livelihood into material, you know, I don't think we would be so concerned about it. We would just be kind of freed up to focus on creating the things that we love because we didn't have to worry about that side of life. But here I am living in my own utopia as a public school educator, trying to equalize out a cruel and uncaring world.
Yeah. Well, and then here's another issue that comes in from making print and plays and stuff, right? And this kind of is tangentially related. So there's people that like want iron-fisted like control of their content, right? So I'm going to use 2 TV shows as kind of an analogy to this. So Game of Thrones and HBO, right? Like, they are like, yeah, like they do not want to give up anything for that. Like, you know, I've heard from some people online, it's like if you try to pirate an episode of Game of Thrones, like you start getting like nasty cease and desist orders. And like,
didn't you get one, Andy?
I think so. Oh yeah, I did. That was a while back. Yeah, and I got that too. But they do that, and they're very tight-fisted. However, a different show, right? Let's take this. So, Battlestar Galactica, the remake, right? That came out on the Sci-Fi Channel. They like openly admitted that piracy probably helped that show become what it was. Literally, because they're like, you know, a lot of people started buying subscriptions to the Sci-Fi Channel or buying episodes online because of Battlestar Galactica. It wasn't any other show. Like, and what happened was like their, you know, they would have family members or friends that were talking about it because they were like, you know, sci-fi nerds and watching it on the Sci-Fi Channel. And then these people didn't want to invest in changing their cable package or paying for episodes or waiting, so they started pirating it, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, this is really good. And then all of a sudden, then they went back and started buying subscriptions to the Sci-Fi Channel and buying episodes. And it actually ended up spreading the word vastly more than it would have had nobody been doing that. So I could see the same situation happening. And I'm, you know, let's bring it back to Container. You know, I'm sure Mercury Games, when they thought about re-releasing Container, were seeing the amount of effort people were putting in making and print and plays of it. And if I were seeing a lot of people doing that, people are like going through hoops and craziness to make their own copies, that to me tells me there's a demand for that product. Right? To where if nobody was making print and plays and you were like all crazy cease and desist on anyone who tried it, like nobody would see that and your product would stay out of print.
All right, hypothetical here, because I think I might be onto something based on what you've been saying. I think I'm taking what you said and trying to develop it into I don't know, a tangential thought. Let's say company owns a game, does a simple print run of a game. And it is, let's say, for example, Hollandspiel, it does a Hollandspiel print run, which is going to certainly satisfy Hollandspiel customers. However, we all have been there when somebody who's not used to Hollandspiel opens the box for the first time and then goes on, makes a YouTube video. So like, let's say that's how the game is in print. And then, you create this print and play of the game that is, let's just say hypothetically that you're not able to get a hold of it from Hollandspiel, that it's, for whatever reason out of print from them. I know that their model is specifically made to never, nothing ever goes out of print because.
Well, no, technically it could, because they only buy like some like 2 or 3 year licenses. So things could cycle out if it's not Tom Russell's design.
All right, so let's say something cycled out, and then Hollandspiel has not opted to repurchase it. So you make your print and play, which Andy, in my experience with your print and plays, usually you want them to be functional, and you want to mount the board. You do things to this game that
overkill.
And then Hollandspiel puts it back in print, so that if you buy from them, you're basically doing it for a paper map and a sheet of counters and a deck of cards that smell like crap. And I know that they've worked those out. I'm just here. I am just sticking a little humor in there.
Those were the early ones, really.
Fair enough. So yeah, I shouldn't have thrown that in here. Anyway, I don't mean to distract here, but are you obligated now to buy this because you have made essentially for yourself a product that at least could be viewed by the person that made it, especially as a superior product to what they are putting out? And so that's why I think where's the responsibility then? The publisher's like, okay, here I am, and let's take this to its irrational conclusion and say that, let's say that a publisher, assumes that everybody's running under the same sort of prime directive as you, Andy, in print and plays, your print and play prime directive of destroying your original as soon as a copy is made. So a publisher just essentially puts out a stack of 5 sheets of cardstock that you have to do all the cutting, all the mounting, everything yourself, paper map, nothing is made well. You even have to cut the cards yourself and put them in sleeves so that they actually shuffle.
So we're going back to like the first days of Sierra Madre here.
Sure, fair enough. And then they charge an exorbitant amount for that. I mean, at that point, I think that we all, what do you think, Andy? Does it still hold up there? Are you going to buy are you going to pay, let's say that they were like, hey, pay me $40 for the PDFs of this print and play to make your print and play quote unquote valid? Are you going to take it that far? Is it going to depend on how much you care about the game? Is it going to be dependent on, did they have a tearful designer diary in which they talked about how difficult it is to make it in the world as a struggling designer, which is, I mean, very true, I'm sure, to try to go full time. At what point is it this responsibility? Because to me, I don't know because I'm not print and playing games. I'm generally playing the games that are there. So I'm making this hypothetical and I'm leaving it to you, and I have no real idea here what to say except that I hope for once I think I can hear grinding, which is telling me that your brain might be trying to work again.
Oh yeah. It works. Dude. I don't know. Anyway, all right, so let's put it I see where you're going, and let's do this. So all right. So yeah, because some if you look at say Winsome Games and Hollandspiel and stuff, I can often do better component quality than some of those games can, or war game companies in general, right? Anyone who does a lot of P&P work, making mounted boards and other stuff like that isn't too difficult, and you can easily kind of blow past that. I would like to think the way I would handle that is, let's say, a Hollandspiel game or just any war game company game, right? Okay, so let's just make it generic so I'm not picking on one group or not. So let's say a war game company has a game that traditionally has been your typical counters, paper map, dice, and a rule book, right? So I can do all of that on my own pretty dang easily, minus box. Boxes are a pain in the butt for some reason. But okay, so let's say one is out of print. I have made a P&P of it, maybe using somebody else's or something, which I said before, it's out of print. Copies are expensive, and I've decided not to go that route. It comes back into print. My general philosophy and the way I would like to say I would handle that would be then I would still purchase the copy. Even if that was I purchase the copy, get it in, throw all their stuff away, and put my stuff in the box. Because to me, the components are one thing, but I do want to truly do my best to honor the people that put it into work and stuff like that and give them the money they're due. I suppose if I felt like it was stupidly expensive for what they're doing, I might rethink that possibly. In your argument, let's say I'm only going to give you a PDF and I'm going to charge $50 for it. It's No. Although, funny enough, Hollandspiel actually does pretty much all of their games you can print and play. Like, they actually go through a company called War Game Vault, and they put all their files up there. You just pay to have access to the files. So you could, buy an Infamous Traffic, which was like $50.
So is there any designer that's not doing what you're talking about? Like, I mean, in that case, I mean, if it's that easy, Andy, then shouldn't any designer who wants their game to actually be profitable find a PDF sourcing company where you pay per download? And then if they're not doing that, they're not doing the homework that you need. And then ultimately, unless, you're going to seek them out and drop them $10 on PayPal, like, is it...
People has done that, but the issue I've heard that comes into play with some of this is the following. Generally, when I'm making a print and play of something, unless it is like a fully authorized print and play that you've bought access to or that they've put out there for free, a lot of Kickstarters will put out prototype files for free so you can make a print and play, but it's not going to fully be what you get in the final product, right? I will kind of do my best with the files I've got, sometimes copy, whatever I need to do. And so then I kind of feel the impetus to pay that back in some way, shape, and form. I guess where it becomes kind of an issue, and I think this is another issue to bring up that some people do and do not have a problem with. If I am making a print and play of an out-of-print game for my personal use and nobody else's, and I'm not selling it, I'm not trying to make money off of it, that to me is different than, let's take Dune, 10 years ago. If I am paying other people to do it, does that change the equation? Because I know with Dune specifically, that was being done quite a bit, right? There were a lot of people paying for like basically professional grade print and plays to be made of Dune. They were using different artwork and stuff because that does get into more of a legal issue if you're using the artwork of a game. And that
the game itself doesn't exist outside of that legally. I mean, like, right. you actually, any board game company can do it. The only thing stopping them is, anybody who's familiar with Martin Wallace on in the Court of Public Opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the same for a lot of things right now. Like all of this concept of copyright and all of that, like the whole copyright system is working, on something that existed basically 10 to 20 years ago. Like it is not kept pace with modern technology. So to a certain extent, that's weird. There's not really a cut and dry. It's a very like legal-ish world when it comes to that kind of thing. So unfortunately, for the most part, I mean, it really does come down to like your personal morals and what you think of it.
Oh, fresh out of those.
Yeah. But I mean, that's seriously the issue. Like I have my set of principles for making a print and play that I try to follow. There are people that basically think in the world, it's like, if I can copy it, you should have made it harder for me to copy. I mean, there are people like that. So, how does that then play out and work in the system and all that? I don't know. I don't know. The way I think about it too is this. If you guys ever bought games from Stardock, the ones that did like Galactic Civilization and stuff like that on the computer, right?
Yeah.
And they did software too. Their philosophy, which is what I like when it comes to this idea of copyright and making copies of things, was this. I can spend a lot of effort trying to prevent copyright, to like smash people and throw barriers up to make copies of the game. The problem is you do that long enough and fiercely enough, you actually then start making it difficult for people to enjoy the products. And then that's going to cost you business. So their motto always was make a product so good that people want to pay me for it. Because as they said, there's going to be a certain amount of people that are going to try to cheat you no matter what you do. So if you
and there are people that are kind of like somewhat, I mean, because not every game's a home run for every person, right?
Oh,
like
right.
there are many games that I've purchased and felt like when I bought them and I looked at the components, I thought it was a great deal. Then I played the game and I was like, totally, it just didn't hit for me, right? And so, I mean, to a certain extent, like a game means something more to some people than it does to others. Like for some people, a game is worth paying $250 to get a giant edition of it, or paying $250 to get it when it's out of print, or paying $250 just because you love the game and you want to support the designer, and you know that that's going to maybe help make it possible. You know, there's a reason that like donations like have kept a lot of different things alive, right? It's like the public's form of being able to give what they can and not what it's worth, which is something that's really subjective and different to every person and is determined by a market, which is kind of a conglomerate, you know, like a just of every, you know, everything is all being aggregated together. So yeah, when it comes down to it, like, I don't know, I think everybody's got a different place on it, right? Where we're all, I think most of us at least are approaching this hobby from, at least the three of us on the podcast are approaching this right now. And I know TC as well. And I'm sure many listeners, as people who are doing this to try to enjoy ourselves and for it to be fun. And in that case, like a little bit of altruism every now and then to give towards somebody who specifically did a really good job, and, you know, like overpaying or paying what some people, especially when some people don't see the value, it makes us feel better when we like, you know, like when we perceive a value and others can't see it, it especially makes it feel like, well, the impetus now is on you to give because nobody else really gets it. And I think you see that with like niche publishers. But like, you know, to somebody who's not, you know, who's maybe wouldn't even be that entertained by the game to start with, it could be a devastating experience, you know, to pay the same price as you do for, let's say, a Hollandspiel game, right? To, you know, and we see how that happens with the uninitiated, who are thankfully being immediately remediated, and remediated in a not exactly the most polite of ways by people who, of course, know better.
Right. Yeah, and it's weird. Like, it really does come down to a question of like, what's okay with you? What is value to you? You know, like another example that might seem to run contrary to what I've been saying is City of the Big Shoulders, right? So I still have the P&P I made of that. I did that with permission from the designer using the files. Now, the final game that's going to come out is not going to be exactly the same as my P&P. One, it'll have a way better components, but it also will be, there's rules tweaks and stuff that made it into the final copy that didn't make it into mine. Let's say I don't buy a City of the Big Shoulders. Will I still consider it okay to use my print and play? In that case, actually, yes, because one, the designer allowed me to make it and encouraged. The designer
actually created much of the stuff.
Really,
I was going to say, like, a lot of the stuff got updated by the designer. So you created a lot yourself, Andy, but also, I mean, like, you know, that's the designer's product as well. And that was given to you to, you know, to the show to kind of talk about it and try to get the word out. So, I mean, there's a service that's been provided by us.
That's the thing, is ultimately by also making and having that, we helped promote the game, and also by going through that rule book, I provided feedback to him on changes and things that made the final rule book and the product better.
But isn't that what you're doing every time that you make a game, though? And just, I mean, with this one, you can see it a lot more clearly because there was, you know, at that point, the game actually actively, you know, it was a goal of the designer to try to make the game better, and so there was a bit of a service exchanged. But like, to a certain extent, aren't we doing that every time we sit down with a game and teach people who haven't played it before how to play?
I think so in some ways. And like, you could argue that I've, you know, if I make a copy of an out of print game, that I'm essentially almost doing free advertisement there. Yeah. I think what slightly makes it different for me in the case of City of the Big Shoulders is like, there was kind of a understanding and relationship between the designer and the company and me and what I was giving and providing and all that.
That's been mentioned in our chat, like that, kind of what you just talked about, that like.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that gives me a little bit, you know, that I guess having that understanding allows me to modify sort of my base way I would normally handle that.
If you ask the designer for a P&P question, like how should I print this out, and they answer you, it's totally okay now. Like that's the go ahead.
Yeah.
Which,
well, yeah. It comes down to an issue because I actually before I made a P&P of a certain 18xx game, right? I actually took it upon myself to email the designer and ask, like, is there a sum of money I could give you to have access to the files briefly, just so I could make a good one? And the response ultimately I got back was no. But what they said is the reason they don't is if you essentially put it out there to be a P&P, it is like hell to get anything published out of that again, because it basically, the files are out there and then companies don't want to take a chance on it at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. So like, it depending on where you're at, it can actually be seen as a negative thing. Now I would say that that's, like, that might be an outdated perspective. I think that you'd mentioned how like our laws haven't really kept up with, our laws governing intellectual property seem like they're probably not doing their job in a lot of cases. Game of Thrones, you talked about, it's the most pirated show ever, so maybe their policy is that they don't like being known for that.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, when it comes down to it, really is intellectual property and copyright law has not kept pace even remotely with modern society. And so, like, everything, there's no way to provide clear-cut answers to this topic and what's okay. It really, honestly, it's a very gray, very muddy situation, and it really does come down to a lot to sort of your personal code of honor, morals, and ethics.
Which is like, it's like tipping, which is definitely not, from the perspective of a former waiter, it is not just based on your performance as many people think. It is based so much on the clientele and what they have access to, their resources, as well as their system of morals and ethics, and just whether or not they've been educated in this, strange custom that we have that many would call a vestigial structure from there no longer being prohibition. And anyway, I have a hard time just in general arguing capitalistic morals, Andy. I am a public school teacher, so
I last year, so it's not like I can do any better.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't do the P&Ps and stuff, but I certainly. I mean, I have a very high respect for the people that make the games, and I'd love to provide what I can, which usually, as the richness that I possess is generally not specifically in the material side of life. So, what can you do? Well, sometimes you can talk, and other times you can shut up. So unless we have more to say,
or marry a college professor that makes 4 times your income.
You kept man, Andy. You kept man.
Oh God, yeah, but it's
Trent. Do you have any final thoughts about the ethics of P&P?
I don't. Assuming you're referring to exclusively to issues with the out of print games, my feeling is this: I owned a print and play of Dune when it was out of print, and now that it is coming back into print, I'm buying the real published version.
Was that because it's nice or because ethics?
Ethics.
Straight up.
I don't even hesitate to say that. I would feel bad. The only reason I owned a print and play of Dune is because it was almost impossible to get a copy, and I was not rewarding the designer in any way by buying a secondhand, out of print, off market copy. They were not going to get any rewards for that. The designer was not. The original publisher was not. The only person that was going to get any money of that was a secondhand person that had bought a copy and sat on it. And I don't care about that person.
Gotcha.
That person I don't care about. So I'll buy the print and play because it's cheaper. And
but they're a listener, Trent. We care about you. Keep listening.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When it comes back in print, then I can buy the copy that I would have bought originally if it had stayed in print. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I gotcha.
The cost of the print and play, I view it as me being impatient.
Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah. You paid that price for being impatient.
Mm-hmm. Well, that comes down to what Kickstarter's like. You could make a P&P of Scythe forever, It was just going to cost you a lot of, yeah, you could do it. It was going to be crap compared to the final one, but, and a lot of Kickstarters do that now. They'll throw the P&P files up and be like, yeah, if you're impatient, want to start playing it now, this will be mostly what you get, other than it'll be a lot nicer with a little cleaned up rules.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean, you can even look at leader games with Root. Like, I've gotten email after email that's basically like, here's the new stuff, P&P it all you want.
Yeah, certainly just based on the philosophy, right? And that still has been super, super successful, raising tons of money. So,
God,
yeah, I mean, like when people are taken care of, I think we all think differently. And it depends on where we are at, too. It's not just our own like preparation, but also if we have the luxury to make a financial decision based on our morals and ethics by itself, that means that we are not desperate. And there are those out there that are desperate or perceive desperation or are, living on such a frugality by either choice or by constrictions outside of choice that, there's certainly no judgment I would be ready to pass.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's important to note that like board games are kind of a luxury hobby in and of itself. So,
well, they're seen as one, but humans need play, and everybody should have a decent hobby. So there's, I'm making here the devil's, obviously not the base pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but have something, everybody, and I do think
does the hierarchy of needs include Eagle Griffin Productions?
And on that note, we are going to hype some games. So the games that will be made available at some point, and we seem to be doing expansions and second editions. So Andy, where on the ethics side are you sitting with Pax Pamir, whose second edition is coming in soon?
That's easy. I've never made a P&P of it. But no, honestly, originally I was going to pass this game up because I had the first edition of Pax Pamir. And unfortunately, somebody said it's like, oh, Pax Pamir second edition is going to be more streamlined. And I'm like, no. But anyway, after a while, I started reading about it and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, no, you know what? This is actually... And also, I had doubted Colon Root and ended up regretting that. So I'm like, yeah, no.
Fool me once.
Yeah, can't do it. But anyway, I'm hyping Pax Pamir's second edition because I believe from the last email I got from the Kickstarter, it's basically on the slow boat now. So we are looking at probably fulfillment here in this month to next month, like August at worst. Yeah, it's going to be sweet. I watched a couple playthroughs of people that had kind of like a P&P of it that the designer had sent around or like pre-production copies. And like, yeah, everything's going to be just way better with this. It looks awesome. It looks like the gameplay, a lot of the elements of messing with each other is going to be preserved, but done in very interesting ways. It looks different. It looks like it's going to be have the bones of the original, but be kind of different in enough ways to kind of keep it. So like I fully intend to keep my first edition copy on hand still. I'm not going to get rid of it. But the second edition copy looks like it'll be more playable with a wider range of people. And yeah, just the components, the gameplay, and the fact that, I haven't met a Cole game I haven't really loved yet. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this and getting it to the table.
Sure. I hear that, dude. Pax Pamir, the one that won me over to the entire Sierra Madre Games
Did you
library.
This one too?
No. I still have my original Pax Pamir, actually the expansion, just Kyber Knives, but I was, as soon as I saw that there was a second edition coming out, I like put mine up for trade and sale. And now that I haven't moved I didn't get a chance to move the expansion, unfortunately, just the base game. And so I'm just like sitting on the expansion thinking like, well, it's probably worthless now, but, and maybe I'll look for it if it does become, like like something affordable and stuff. But it's one of those where, as much as I love it, I'm probably not going to be playing it outside with you guys. You guys are my heavy. Like, I'm playing games like Cacao and stuff without you guys. So just understand that, like, everybody, everybody has different games and different levels that they play with.
Yeah, no, anyway, but yeah, I'm really interested in this one and getting it to the table. It just looks like it'll be more interesting, a lot of fun, more approachable. And, hopefully it might be the first time I sit down with a PAX game with a group, explain it, and people go, I understand all of the rules, but how the crap do I win this game? They're just very opaque. This one will probably still be pretty opaque, but at least maybe the rules will get, the rules and the graphic design will be such that stuff kind of gets out of the way a little bit quicker and people can get into it. I know, like, the artwork's going to be improved and, like, the historical text even, which will be really interesting. So yeah, if you like playing games about weird issues in Afghanistan, this game will be great.
Yeah, the great game, as they called it. So that was one second edition, and now for our first expansion, I will tell you all about an expansion I was surprised to see for Terra Mystica, which I wasn't sure. I thought, they're certainly going to be releasing an expansion for Gaia Project before they release an additional expansion for Terra Mystica, as at least, the fool in me thought so, because no, they are, lo and behold, releasing Terra Mystica Merchants of the Sea, which is, from what I've gathered, all about, like, essentially a movable building that you can build, and then it will do importing and exporting, which actually provides power to the player receiving the import, but it seems like it provides VP and resources. So it's much more lucrative to the person exporting, as is very common, and like why it's trading a thing. Well, the person doing the trading is the one really making the money. The person that's getting the stuff is certainly enjoying things, but it's not as tangible as a resource, but rather the luxury of your life improving a little bit. It's exciting to see this. It looks like there's going to be pieces included that work together with the original expansion that added 3 new races, and I look forward to trying this and adding it to my collection of Terra Mystica. A game that I didn't realize was going to be continually getting expansions. So that's Terra Mystica Merchants of the Sea.
I've heard somewhere too that they said this is the first of 2 coming out next year, possibly.
Wild.
Yeah, there's another one after this one, supposedly.
Yeah, and it'll come with more boards or something with the Merchants one too. I thought Terra Mystica was just done. And then I just saw this a couple days ago, and I'm like, wait, what? Well, I haven't sold it yet, so maybe this will be worth picking up. All right.
Yeah, and I still love. I mean, Terra Mystica is just a different. I mean, it's different than Gaia Project too. Like, it feels different enough that I'm like, I'll hang on to it. It does feel kind of like, at this point, if I'm going to dig my teeth into anything and try to get a group surrounding a game, where I play the same game, I'd rather play Gaia, mainly because I haven't played out. And seen, I haven't played it out to the point where, like, I'm gonna be like, ooh, you made a bad move. I won't be able to know that people have made a bad move and see that. I won't say it, of course, but I would, I would rather.
The one I'm really interested to see is if they end up in one of those 2 putting in a modular board that scales the different player counts better, because that's been one of the biggest things I've heard people say they prefer about Gaia Project is it actually plays good at all player counts instead of Terra. It was 4 or 5 if you're all masochists. But anything less than 4 was just kind of eh.
Gotcha. All right. So let's finish it all off here, Trent, with the games expansion that I am excited, and I feel like this is a game that is, a smaller in content, at least in the amount of pieces and the amount of content that was in the base game, that I'm kind of interested to see. It didn't seem super expandable, but I know that that's not the case, because here comes an expansion for Inish.
Well, I mean, it expands Ennis in the ways you would expect it to. There's more territories. Each one of them has its own advantage card. Throw a bunch of new cards in an epic tail deck, stuff like that. But the big thing, the one rules change, it's kind of a more of expansion for the most part. And this is Seasons of Ennis, by the way, the first expansion for Ennis. The big thing it does add is it adds a season wheel, which is basically like a series of 4 rotating effects that change each round. So like you have a spring season and a summer season, and as the turns go by, the season changes, and that changes a little bit of some of the effects of the game. They don't seem like they're, when I read them, they don't seem like they're huge changes, but I think in the game they would feel much bigger than they read. So it's basically what it is. It just changes the game a little bit as it goes from turn to turn. And so it's not like hidden information at all. You know these things are coming. And so I really think that I would like to play. I'm looking forward to playing with that wheel. Also, it has pieces so you can play with a 5th player.
Oh God! Then you guys are gonna like have a 6-hour game.
Yeah, we've already seen like a 4-hour game of Innis.
That was because we were all like, no one was buying the stuff that could reduce the number of things you needed to win the game, and we all kept blocking each other from everything else. That's why that should not have taken that long. That's not Innis.
Well,
Innis was a 90-minute game, not a 3-hour game.
Sure. No, it seemed like everybody's happy with it, and you guys all acknowledged that you were choosing to make it last that long.
Yeah, it was very, and this is very player directed. It really is.
Yeah,
like everything that goes on to it is like, it feels like the games in that, especially Innis and Kemet, of the set of the games that are in that kind of group, they feel very much player driven. That's the kind of game I like, and that's what I like about. That's what I like about Innis. It's very teachable and very player driven. You don't feel like the game is on rails. You don't feel like you're being told what to do, and I like that.
Yeah, I could just imagine like the scenario where you have like a game of Kemet where everyone thinks turtling's a good idea.
It can happen. That's the thing. It's all player driven. That's the fun of it to me.
Yeah. That would be an awful game of Kemet.
Well, eventually someone would have some combination of tiles with which they could go do something, but it would take a while.
Yeah.
It'd be slow for a long while.
All the tiles were bought in our game of Kemet because nobody would attack.
I have seen that sort of thing happening, but yeah, I do think Kemet does a good job of like sort of forcing players out, because any player that sees what everybody else is doing and just starts to, starts to do a little bit of stuff, starts to look, because there'll be like you're piece limited in Kemet. Anyway, here I am going down a rabbit hole. Which, shame on you guys. It must be starting to get late. But anyway, thanks.
The point here is that both Kemet and Innis are fun games that I recommend.
Yeah, me too. I agree with you, Trent, and I look forward to seeing what seasons of Innis will add. I've had really positive experiences with it too. Well, thanks, folks, for tuning in here on this week's episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Hope you have a great week of gaming, and the next time that you hear from me, I will finally be at the summer point for me. I will finally have finished my my teaching commitment. So anyway, holding strong here, and have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.
Nice.